What is the difference between karma, fate, and free will? Is there no escape from past misdeeds?
Okay, this is a very good question and very old question which people are asking in most satsangs. And we have got to approach this question with not with confidence, but with some hesitation. And because the way people use words is different. Karma, let us take karma first. Now, karma is a Sanskrit word which has an enfolded meaning in it, and it is cause and effect. So you do something, you sow a seed, and then you reap a harvest. You sow a seed and you reap a harvest. Now, that whole classical interpretation of karma is, you've got to be very careful, because we, a certain implied meaning is there. It's understood that you are the body, but then the fact that you are the body is an illusion. That's not actually true. So through these hands and through this mouth and through this tongue and through this brain, some words are spoken and some actions are sent out into the world. But we really don't know who is the agent. Who you are, we don't know. We have got to crack that puzzle. And then we find that we have to suffer often in life, and we get our share of suffering. And then we try to link that suffering which we have got, and we think it's a kind of nemesis, we think it's a kind of retribution, and we want to tie it to either what we did in the present life or what we did in a previous life. So the whole logic of karma carries with it an assumption that you know who you are. But the problem is that you do not know who you are. You've got to crack that puzzle. And the puzzle and the cracking of that puzzle is the problem of is the fourth goal of the human life, and this is called quest for liberation. And so having said that that you do not know who you are, so the whole definition of karma stands on very shaky ground, because you assumed that you know who you are. And on the basis of that assumption as to who you are, you said that it is cause and effect, and you send out some energy into the cosmos, and then there is an impacting return energy which comes back to you, and you call that karma. But the individual itself is an illusion. So when we have gone that far to learn the ultimate lesson that the individual itself is illusion, then karma actually must become redefined. And we are not ready to give that redefinition of karma yet. So we will come to that later in these satsangs, and then come to that free will and fate. Now you have the divine will is already there. It is enshrined in every human life, the divine will. And the divine will, but you stake a claim that you have a very strong will, and you kind of convert the divine will which is given to you or which is loaned to you, and you say it's my will, but actually it's the divine will. And that divine will can be in small measure or it can be in Himalayan measure. Now, if it's in Himalayan measure, huge quantities of divine will, then you are a person with a very strong determination. You are a very stubborn person, and you'll be able to go very far, warding off all obstacles, and you'll be able to achieve a great deal because of your tenacity, which comes from your strong will. Whereas a person who has got a weak will, because the divine endowment was weak in his case, in that body and in that consciousness, it was weak. So that person will not have your tenacity, will not have your stubbornness, and therefore will not have your higher achievement, which was part of your divine architecture. You had that higher achievement. So there is a human will, which if we try to uncover it, it's actually not our will. It is the divine will, which is enshrined in the body and which is enshrined in the consciousness, and which is part of what I have been calling as the divine architecture. And the divine architecture has got a divine conspiracy which goes against you, which hurts you. And the divine architecture also has a divine patronage which blesses you and which pampers you. Both are there. So wherever the will is enshrined centrally, very strongly, then it's a case of divine patronage. It's not a case of divine conspiracy. And it's the handiwork of the divine. And that's there for you as a limited body and as a limited consciousness. It's available for you. Those blessings are available and you can act in any way you like. Now, question is fate binding? Now, you cannot give a yes-no answer. That would be too absurd and that would be too naive. And because if you talk to 1,000 people, make them sit in front of you and talk to every one of them case by case, then you honestly ask their verdict. What is your verdict on free will versus a binding destiny? Some people will say, I never found my destiny to be binding and obstructive, and I achieved whatever I wanted to achieve in my life. And then you talk to 10 others, and the 10 others will say, oh my God, my fate was very binding. I was in chains, my hands were tied, my mouth was tied, my feet was tied, I had no power, I couldn't achieve things. So some people will tell one kind of story, some other people will tell another kind of story. So it's a customized thing. It varies from individual to individual, but everybody has a quantum of what you call free will, which is a very bad term. I don't like to use the term because it is borrowed divine will. It is your will which is borrowed from the divine. That's what you call free will. So you have a share of that borrowed divine will, which is obviously a divine patronage, which is obviously a divine blessing. And then you have also a destiny which is crippling and which is binding, which denies you freedom. So you cannot achieve some things. You cannot break your chains. You cannot throw off the shackles. So partly you're bound and partly you have that freedom. And some people will have more of the freedom. Some people will have less of the freedom. Some people will have more of the willpower. Some will have less of the willpower. So it's got immense spectral diversity, and we've got to go case by case. So there is no uniform law because it's completely, strictly speaking, there are no individuals and there is only the divine, and the divine is acting in two theaters. In the theater of the body and in the theater of consciousness. It's enacting two tragicomedies. One tragicomedy is unfolding in the theater of the body. What happens to the body? Is the body pampered or is the body kicked and chained? And another tragicomedy is happening in the consciousness, the way the consciousness works, how it slashes back and forth. Is there too much of anger? Is there less of anger? Is there too much of love? Is there less of love? Is there less of intelligence, more of intelligence? Everything, the whole thing. So the divine is orchestrating these two dramas in the two theaters, and we've got to understand that for our greater peace. And you've got to not believe anybody, not believe me. No, you've got to discover the answer yourself. And you will discover the moment the mind is voided, the moment the mind has fallen silent, many things you will discover just by keeping quiet. Not even by actively thinking, no, not by thinking, no, but by being quiet.